This is the demilitarized zone that separates North Korea from South Korea. And it's well protected with heavy barbed wire fences, minefields, and it is meant to prevent any incursions by the enemy. And as you can see, it's still serious business. This is a South Korean guard post in the demilitarized zone, and it's a very tranquil and quiet place. But that really belies the truth, because less than 2 kilometers away is North Korea. And beyond their borders are more than 1 million North Korean soldiers who are poised to potentially attack the South. And on the southern side, more than 600,000 South Korean soldiers are awaiting such an eventuality. But what's amazing about these hills is that in 1951 to 1953, more than 20,000 Canadians served here, exactly in this position.
The night seems to be so long, you think the sun is never going to come up. You imagined all kinds of things in the dark. I mean, you're standing there by yourself, and the other guy in a slit trench. Your nerves keep you on edge because you know that there are people out there. It's a waiting game and you're waiting for the inevitable.
We're driving through Seoul, and Seoul is one huge, vibrant city. It's very modern. I don't see any buildings that date over 30 years, more or less any will date back to the Korean War. All I've seen of Seoul are the old archival photographs, which really shows the place as a ruin. So it's going to be interesting to try to find out what remnants of the Korean War we can find. This is the National Cemetery in Seoul, and it's an enormous and beautiful place, and you can see why they call it the spirit of the nation. We often think of the Korean War as being somewhat small. When you come here and see the enormity of the suffering of the Korean people, you get a better understanding. There's a building just ahead that is even more poignant. It's the memorial to the missing. This is a very moving place. It lists the names of more than 100,000 South Korean troops who were missing during the Korean War. And what's even more powerful is this, the floral tributes, the photographs of the soldiers. These men have not been forgotten. During the Korean War, 21 nations, including Canada, came to assist South Korea. But the question remains, why were Canadians fighting in a country that no one had ever heard of? In August 1945, the Americans dropped atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and the Second World War came to an end. But the period afterwards became one of turbulence, as our old ally Joseph Stalin started to absorb countries in Eastern Europe. And an iron curtain descended across that area, and it appeared that war was going to occur. In 1949, Mao Zedong's communists defeated the Chinese nationalists, and the focus of the Cold War turned to Asia. There was a possibility of war between Communist China and Formosa, but no one dreamed anything would happen in Korea. But they were wrong. This is the grave of a South Korean soldier killed on June 26, 1950. He was one of thousands of South Korean soldiers killed in the North Korean invasion.
The Asiatic crisis point becomes Korea. Korea and its southern capital, Seoul, where violent warfare reached its peak following invasion from the Red-dominated north. The Blitz-like attack slightly more than 700 air miles from Tokyo saw the Russian-backed North Korean army roll down past the 38th parallel, the line of demarcation between the communist stronghold and the Southern Republic. In the capitals of the globe, there were undisguised uneasiness and grave concern that here might be the prelude to a wider atomic conflict.
The UN immediately condemns the brutal invasion and demands a complete withdrawal of all communist forces. The North Koreans ignore the warning, and by the 27th, they are poised to capture the South Korean capital of Seoul. This is the Han River, and today it separates North Seoul from South Seoul. But in 1950, Seoul was a much smaller city, and it was completely on the north side. And there was only one bridge across the Han River. In late June 1950, the civilian population heard about the great successes of the North Korean invading army, and panic set in. And their only way out was this bridge. Throughout June 26th and June 27th, tens of thousands of refugees crossed this bridge, fleeing to the south. By the 27th, it was clear that Seoul was going to fall to the North Koreans. And although the bridge was full of thousands of refugees, the South Korean army had to make the hard decision to blow the bridge. The destruction of the Han River Bridge kills more than 800 South Koreans, but stops the North Korean tanks from advancing. Now, those remaining in Seoul are trapped and at the mercy of the approaching communists. Among them is a 22-year-old student, Kapyong.
That morning, before noon, I didn't know. Rumor is around the Han River gone, exploded. And then, no way out. Now I cannot get out. Around 10 o'clock on the street, tanks coming, so everybody, now the North Korean here. So many bodies in town, and they cut up the bamboo shoot, they kill that. They don't need any ammunition. Only I saw 2 eyes out by the bamboo shoot. I saw that. And finally, I asked with my friend, let's go, get out Seoul. I made red band, looks like a communist, and a special mission. Many people lined up to waiting the ferry. I asked who in charge of here. Somebody at the North Korean communist. So I told him, very low voice, we are special mission to South. That's why we get the boat, cross the river, and the band is out. Let's go we are now free.
Kapyong joins tens of thousands of others fleeing the communists. Within days, the North Koreans bridge the Han River and continue south, pushing back the remnants of the South Korean army. It's now clear that South Korea will cease to exist unless someone comes to their assistance and comes quickly. Okay, we're driving on the main highway just north of Seoul, and in this position, the communists are just about a kilometer on the other side of the river. And this area is critical to any advance that the communists would want to make, so there are a large number of tank obstacles located on the highway. And the overpass we're coming up to is one of those tank obstacles. It looks like a commercial sign and a regular overpass, but it's not. It's actually huge slabs of concrete suspended above 3 columns. And what would happen is, in an emergency situation, they would blow the columns and these large slabs of concrete would come down and provide an obstacle for any communist armor. After the capture of Seoul in June 1950, communist troops led by T-34 tanks moved south, crushing all opposition. The situation deteriorates so quickly, the UN is forced to act. It realizes if it does not get troops on the ground immediately, South Korea will be lost. Throughout July, thousands of Americans arrive in Korea and are quickly thrown into battle. But their numbers are insufficient to stem the momentum of the communist advance. By early August, the Americans and South Koreans are beaten back and on the verge of defeat. They will make their final stand defending a small corner of Korea known as the Pusan Perimeter. This is the Nakdong River, and in the summer of 1950, it was the western wall of what was known as the Pusan Perimeter. Pusan Perimeter was all that was left of South Korea, and the North Koreans had every intention of crushing that position. On the west side of this bridge were the North Koreans, and on the east side were the ROK Army. And they would face off in one of the most decisive battles of the war. We're very fortunate to have found Mr. Kim. He served with the 1st ROK Division, which is the Republic of Korean Army, in 1950, and he fought at the 38th parallel, and he fought here on the Nakdong River.
저건 강건 내에서 낙동강 건너에서 치고 골자고 하고요. 물로 기도로 물로 막 들어. 그때 물이 참 깊었어요. 강물이 물로 돌아오니까 언젠가 깊어놓으니까 돌아오지를 못합니다. 가운데 좀 돌아오면 우리는 여기서 사기를 일을 하지요. 초만 좀 죽지요. 당시 이 낙동강 물이 처음에는 말이죠. 막혔습니다. 물이 막혔는데 나중에는 한 달간 더 들어가고 나니까 낙동강 물이 벌겠어요. 얼마나 많이 죽어놨던 또. 예.
The North Koreans attacked with superior numbers of tanks and men. But after weeks of fighting, they still cannot crack the UN line. This incredible defense is assisted in large part by the Americans' complete domination of the air. Each communist attack is punished by devastating airstrikes of napalm and high explosive.
이제 태국 우리로서 태국을 우리 군인들 태국 먹고 급파를 못했습니다. 강원리에 접대 있으니까 건너에 있고 하니까 비행기를 폭격을 했는데. 참 심하기 때문에 저기 많이 희생이 많이 돼버리고, 예, 우리 국군에도 큰 도움이 됐죠. 예, 날라가겠죠.
On September 15th, 1950, the Americans deliver a decisive blow with the landing of 70,000 Marines at Incheon. Over the next 6 weeks, the UN destroys the North Korean army and advances towards the Chinese border. But just when complete victory is in sight, the tide of war once again turns. On November 26, 1950, 200,000 Chinese communist troops attack the UN forces and catch them by complete surprise. Within days, the UN forces are in full retreat. The communists inflict terrible casualties on the UN forces and drive them back 200 miles into South Korea. The question of how to deal with the Chinese intervention, whether to strike at targets in China or even use nuclear weapons, paralyzes the American government. The world stands on the brink of total war. It is during this desperate period the first Canadian troops arrive in Korea. We're on a Korean Navy patrol boat just off the port of Busan, or Pusan as it was called during the Korean War. Today you can see it's a very busy port in a city of about 4 million people, but that's not the way it was during the Korean War. Pusan was the port of entry for most Canadians arriving from Japan. It's about a 200-kilometer trip across the sea. And of course, as the men arrived, they would go by the exotic islands, the fishing boats, and see that this was truly a strange land.
Miles off the coast of Korea, barely able to see land, we smelled it. Night soil used on rice paddies was one of the ingredients. I suppose plain old garbage from the port of Pusan contributed to the odor. Someone on deck remarked that if the world needed an enema, they would no doubt insert the tube here. Hours later, we docked in Pusan. So this is Korea.
The first group to come over were the 2nd Patricias. And when they arrived, they were met at the port and quickly put into trucks and taken out into hills for training because they were about to participate in the upcoming United Nations offensive against the communists. The 2nd Battalion PPCLI is fortunate to have an experienced commanding officer, a highly decorated Second World War veteran, Lieutenant Colonel Jim Stone. Stone puts his men through 6 weeks of rigorous training, hoping it will be enough to prepare them for the tough fighting ahead, in difficult terrain and against an unknown enemy.
There seems to be a whole pile of, of false peaks.
Yeah. I know where we crossed the valley floor. It wasn't very wide.
We are traveling through central Korea trying to find the route the Canadians took on their way to join the UN offensive in early 1951. With me is Dave Crook, who has returned to this part of Korea for the first time to try and retrace the steps he took as a 19-year-old private with the 2nd Battalion, Princess Patricias. What we're going to do now is we're going to try to find the village called Chomni. And really, Chomni is the jump-off point for the Canadians in the Korean War.
So Dave, this is Chomni, where you first came into the line. Do you recognize it?
Not really. I mean, types of buildings are the same, but I don't recognize them. We weren't here that long.
What do you remember about going into the line for the first time?
Well, just up here. Well, when we first got here, before we bedded down for the night, we turned and looked out into the field here, and there was Americans that had been slaughtered by the Chinese. It was probably 50 or 60. Never counted them, of course. But they were all caught in their sleeping bags. At first, I didn't really understand what it was, and people started saying, look it. Most of the guys were half out of their bags, some not even out of their bags, some out of their bags completely. They shot them all, yeah. They just killed them all. They had no guards posted, no nothing. They just went to sleep. They thought they were in some kind of Disney World or something. I don't know.
They thought they were safe.
Yeah, I guess they just figured that the war was like way up there somewhere. That's about the first time I realized that the seriousness of what I'd gotten myself into. You know, I joined the Army because I was mad at my girlfriend. And here I am now. Somebody's maybe going to take a shot at me, and I'm not sure I really like that. I'm questioning my wisdom quite a bit at that time. In fact, all that night and the next morning moving out, I'm thinking, Jesus, what have I done? You know, and I'm sure I wasn't the only guy thinking that way.
On February 21st, 1951, the UN begins its offensive with the Patricias leading the advance into the hills. They meet little opposition, and it appears the Chinese are fighting a delaying action to cover a full retreat. For the untested Canadians, it will be their first taste of the treacherous Korean terrain of steep mountains in cold winter conditions. We're going to try to find Hill 419, which is where the Patricias had their first real action in February 1951. It's a whole pile of these hills. Here's a saddle over here. Look at there. I bet you that's it. So this could be our baby over here. That looks like it there.
Could be. It depends what's up here. I think around the bend there.
Okay, we'll go up a little further. Because we came back.
It wasn't that hill. That's too high.
But that means.
Yeah, that looks more like it.
Okay, we'll get in. Let's go back and try it one more time.
Okay.
So you think that this is it?
Well, it sure as hell looks like it.
I thought you said you came down the valley and attacked up the other side.
No. We came down this way and up this way.
Okay.
This is the hill I think we went up and dug in that night.
404.
Whatever this hill is, I have no idea. But this is the hill that I think is 419. But I could be wrong.
So you think this is it?
It sure looks like it to me. I mean, it all fits. It's about the right height. Saddle's there. The other company was dug on the reverse slope there.
Okay, come down here and show us where
We were up here.
Show me we were dug in, how it's set up.
Yeah, well, we were dug in on that ridge line up there. When I get up there, the first night in the line, and platoon commander comes along and says, "Come on with me." I said, "What do you want?" He said, "We're going on a recce." I said, "Wait a minute, I just got here." I said, "Somebody else must have more experience." He said, "No, you're going and the radio man." So we came down this draw here, crossed the valley floor, and went up that draw there, I don't know, maybe 200 yards up there, and came back up the hill, and got up the top, and I thought, oh, geez, I did a great job. First light comes, Platoon Sergeant comes along and says, Platoon Commander wants to see you. Oh, what have I done now? So I go down, and he said, since you were down there with me yesterday, you can lead the company. I thought, holy shit, I just got here, and here, what am I doing on? You know, and I thought they were picking on me or something, but that's just the way it turned out. I led the company up to about halfway up the hill. Platoon Sergeant tapped me on the shoulder and said, stop, this is as far as we go. And the other company came through just as the first section stepped over a sort of line, you could almost say. The machine gun opened up and cut them all down almost, the whole goddamn section. And I was like one step from going around that corner. And we never did get up there that day. The Chinese took off, and we got up to the top without any more casualties, nothing. And we got there, and the 4 Canadians that were killed were laying stripped of their clothes. Well, it's the first casualty that I'd seen that way. I mean, they had some other ones, but that was the first one I'd seen.
So how did that affect your nerves?
Didn't have time to think about it. I mean, yeah, kind of sorry to see 4 guys, but hey, glad it's not me, about the way you think after a while.
Did you think the Chinese were gone for good?
Yeah, it looked that way. It looked like they were going back to China or something, because they seemed to be pulling back. As soon as you hit them hard, they just disappear. But they had other plans, of course, as we all found out.
The withdrawal of the Chinese army is deceptive. In reality, over 400,000 communist troops are preparing for a massive counterstroke against the advancing UN forces. We're just coming into Kapyong village right now, and this is the location where the second Patricias came in April 1951. And Dave, do you recognize it?
I don't see a thing I know, quite frankly. There was nothing here when I was here. It was just a couple of mud huts.
So what were you anticipating when you moved into this location?
The guys were enjoying the rest area, doing the normal stuff that they do there. That's when we got the order to move out. We knew we were in for something, but we didn't know it was that big. I mean, or as big as it turned out to be.
On April 22nd, the Chinese launch a massive offensive, breaking through the front at several points. The Patricias and the Australians are immediately ordered to dig in and prepare defensive positions astride the Kapyong River Valley. But it's a difficult position to defend. Hill 677 is a steep ridge, 1.5 miles across, and the Patricias have only 700 men to hold the final line, defending the road to Seoul. You can see that we're walking right up here, so right around this area.
Right.
And you guys were spread out on these major hills up over here.
Right.
Now you said that Stone went out and reconnoitered it beforehand, and he picked very specific positions.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of the action. I think if he hadn't come out in front here and had a look at it from the enemy's perspective, we probably would have been at a disadvantage. I think looking down from up there, down this way, wouldn't have had the same picture. So I think he's very smart that way.
The ones he picked seem to be very, very steep.
Yeah, they are. They're. I don't know how the Chinese figured they're ever going to get up there, because it is steep. I couldn't even climb it today, I don't think.
So when did you know the Chinese had arrived?
This valley was full of refugees and soldiers streaming south. Just hundreds and hundreds of people, and they're going as fast as their little legs can carry them, and we're still here, and you're saying, holy Christ, what are we doing here? You could see the bodies, and they were just absolutely terrified. They were wanting to get out of there. They didn't care how. They're walking, running, they're on trucks, they're hanging off the side, anything that's moving. And you really start to think about what's going to happen when your turn comes. And that road was just full of people. And when the Australians pulled out, they honked their horns and did all that stuff to get people to move out of the way. But if they didn't get out of the way, they just ran over them. And people were trying to climb on the trucks, and the Australians were beating them off with their rifle butts and stuff like that.
So only the Patricias are blocking the road to Seoul.
Only us, yeah. We're the only ones left. And I think Stone made it pretty clear that when we were put up there, he wasn't going to go backwards. He was going to stay. It was stay or die.
As 20,000 ROC soldiers retreat southward, tens of thousands of Chinese troops pursue them, flooding the Kapyong River Valley. Now all that remains between the communists and the road to Seoul is the 700 men of the Princess Patricias. This is your position over here. This is the back of B. And
Right.
you guys are up at the top there, looking out over the river valley.
Yeah.
What did you see?
Chinese troops coming down in formations, you know, like 6 abreast, walking down the road like they're out for a Sunday walk, but at a double trot. It was like the Roman legions coming down the road. And these guys are coming on like nothing was going to stop them. And we, you know, wondered if we could, I guess. I kind of forgot what my thoughts were, but I think I was scared shitless just looking at them. And I think that we realized we were in for a good fight before the night was out. Waiting is the worst part of it. You don't know where they really are until they get up real close. I can remember firing my rifle, and I don't even know what I was shooting at. Because it looked like there was so many, I figured I couldn't miss anyway. I don't know how they managed to make those guys keep going. Just that part right there is so steep. My God, how did they get up there? Or how did they think they were going to get up there? But they sure as hell tried.
We are climbing up to the top of B Company's position to see if anything remains of the battle. It's very steep and there are no trails, so I doubt any Canadians have been up here since 1951. This is the high point of B Company's position. It's right on the crest of the hill. And you can see here that there's slit trenches all over the place. So I guess it would be like a 2-man slit trench. Of course, it would be a lot deeper then. And they can mount their Brens on the top here. But what's amazing is how steep this hill is. I don't know how the Chinese would have got up here. They'd have to crawl up tree to tree. So you can see how the men could have rolled the grenades down or just kept the pepper fire on them. One of the problems with the Chinese was that they were very quiet. They had rubber shoes, they had cotton uniforms. They were very good at infiltration techniques. So often, even though the terrain was so difficult, they could surprise people. However, on the 24th, 25th of April, they weren't able to surprise the Princess Pats, and they really took it to them as they tried to force their way up these positions. But as the Chinese infiltrated, men further on the ground took care of them. There was a lot of heavy machine guns mounted on half-tracks down in the valley. Stone's strategy for the defense of Kapyong is simply brilliant. One of his best decisions is to locate his half-tracks mounted with 30 and 50 caliber machine guns behind B Company's position. With the men manning the machine guns is Lieutenant Hub Gray.
It's an eerie sight. 500 men advancing towards us and not a discernible sound from any of them. It's as though we are watching unheralded ghosts intent upon harvesting their prey. I alert the men manning the 8 machine guns, telling them not to fire until I give the order. Their leading formation is about 40 meters short of the crest. After what seems an eternity, I order the machine guns to open fire.
We could hear when they cut loose with the machine guns down there. I'm sure they lost probably 4/5 of those people. A 50 caliber machine gun is, it's about as big as your thumb. It goes through 4 people before it stops. Take your head right off. Out of your sight, and after dark, you can't see. You just hear the noise over there. You really don't know what's going on. You hope it's all good. And of course, it turned out that most of it was.
We're on the peak of the hill that was B Company's position. This is one of the slit trenches, and here they fought off the Chinese attack on the night of 24-25 April 1951. But while this attack was going on, the Chinese were going to launch another attack against D Company on the hills right over here. This is the Kapyong River Gorge, and at this point, part of the communist forces split and went off to the left to attack Canadian positions at A Company, or particularly B Company, and a second group split off in this direction to try to take out the positions up on the heights over here. And some of the fiercest fighting took place at D Company's position right on that knob up there. The men are located on all the high points, and really, if the Chinese want them, they're going to have to come up and get them. While the Chinese attacked the positions at B Company, another wave of communists sweep west and attack up the steep ridges leading to the Canadian positions on Hill 677. The Chinese realize if they can take the position on the heights, the whole Canadian line will collapse. So we're trying to find a route up to 677, and so far we haven't found one, but this looks promising, but it's very, very steep.
저 위로 올라가는 길은 산으로 더 올라가는 길은 아예 없는 겁니까? 여기서 이제 등산로가 가들기라고 저 꼭대기라고 저 백풍리 종쪽까지 가는 데가 있고요. 등산로가. And only from here there is a small trail walking up to the hill. So
Like up there?
you cannot drive. So from here you have to walk over.
This is one of the ridges that leads up towards 677. It's one of the few approaches that the Chinese could have taken. But if I'm one of the Chinese soldiers at this point, I'm thinking mutiny. This is an incredible hard climb, and I still got another couple hundred meters to go before I'm even going to meet the Canadians. And you can see how hard this would be, but you're talking maybe 50 men versus maybe 300-400. So the odds are stacked against the Patricias, but the terrain is in their favor. This is an amazing find. This appears to be one of the gun pits of 12th Platoon East. And the fact that, it's obviously sunk in by quite a lot, but it's located about 50 yards from the top of the hill. This is the correct location for it. 12th Platoon was split in two. The other part was on the other side of this ridge. This area was protected from 11th Platoon, which was up in this area here. As you can see, there's almost no chance for the Chinese to get up in this area. But this is a real piece of Canadian history. From here, they can have their Bren guns, and they had about 2 sections of men operating out of this area. But what was really happening, this area was safe, but on the other side of this ridge, things were going really bad.
and there's some incredible fighting going on at 10 Platoon. Fortunately, number 10 Platoon is commanded by an experienced Second World War veteran, Lieutenant Mike Levy. Throughout the early morning of the 25th, Levy's men repulse wave after wave of determined enemy attacks. We've only walked over about, 30 yards from the other position, and this is on the west side of the hill. 3 o'clock in the morning, they broke through here, and they put total attacks on Mike Levy's number 10 Platoon. Now, this is all taking place, like I said, 3 o'clock in the morning. The Chinese are all over the place. Levy's defense of this position is quite exceptional, and in the end, he calls on a 40-minute bombardment on his own positions.
The artillery support is awesome. Without it, we could not sustain ourselves. The continuing attacks involve hundreds or even thousands of brave Chinese soldiers, seemingly exhibiting no fear of dying.
The stand of both 10 Platoon and 12 Platoon saved the day. They stopped the Chinese here cold. Even by the early morning, the Chinese were already starting to pull back. Maybe it was foolish that the Chinese even tried to take these positions, and in the end, they couldn't. They were outfought by the Canadians and their artillery. By the morning of April 25th, after 8 hours of heavy fighting, the Chinese stopped their attacks on the Canadians. The stubborn defense by the Patricias inflicts terrible casualties on the Chinese and prevents the communist breakthrough. Although the Patricias fight off an attacking force of 7,000 Chinese, they suffer remarkably few casualties, with only 10 killed and 23 wounded, a testament to the skill with which the position had been organized and defended. The stand by the Patricias at Kapyong was exceptional, but it took a Korean to truly respect their achievement by raising a monument to their memory. It is no accident that this man who so honors the Canadians is himself a survivor of the Korean War, Kapyong. This is an amazingly sincere gesture by the Korean people to remember the Canadians, and it's very touching as a Canadian to come back and to see this. It's deeply touching.
Well, not only the Canadians, even Koreans, we got to remember. I mentioned the battle map. That's the second PPCLI sector, 677, right there.
When I come to a place like this and I see where I was on this stone, and I can look up at the hill there and see the actual spot, it's powerful. It's very moving, and you start to remember some things that you kind of like to have forgotten. But it is really, really great to see this. It's wonderful. It's a great tribute to the Canadian people from you. Thank you.
Before we leave, I want to present to the Korean War veterans to this stone, this present to your old battlefield stone.
Thank you so much.
Killed at Kapyong, Maurice Carr, Gerald Evans, Leslie Fielding, Leo Gladieux, Curtis Hayes, Joseph Lassard, Earl McCaskill, Bruce McDonald, Walter Marshall, Robert Tolver, Robert Walker, Thomas Wotton.
I look at the place where we were and remember what happened there. Remember the people that died there. And sometimes it's tough to talk about it. You keep saying to yourself, why me? How come I'm still here? And there isn't an answer. You can't answer it. You don't know why.
The battle fought by the Patricias in these hills was a magnificent defensive action, and in the history of the Canadian Army is probably one of the best small unit actions ever fought. And over the next few months, the Patricias will be joined by thousands of other Canadian soldiers as they start to drive north, over more hills, through more valleys, and into North Korea.